Hello, Rapid Withdrawal. Katara Ensive here. I'm making a video to show some of you guys the finer points of overheating, pre-overheating, and just some general tactics you can use, not necessarily in a fight, but before a fight even starts, that can be important to make it easier to beat ships that are really on par with the ship you're using, or maybe even beat ships that are kind of the counter to your ship. So just to use it as an example, I've chosen Comet here. Right now, this is a blaster Comet with an afterburner, web, and scram. You can see in the lows we got a repper, a damage control, and a plating and a mag stab. So it's pretty standard blaster Comet fit, and I'm going to undock. I'm going to show you the first thing that I do in any ship, really, when I undock, when I jump into a new system, anything. As soon as I come out, or as soon as I'm no longer cloaked, the first thing I do, obviously, is turn on my damage control. I immediately pre-overheat my repper. My guns, always. There's no reason not to pre-overheat any sort of repper or any guns that you have on your ship, unless you're in a ship with a huge rack of guns. That can cause problems. The reason is that you can run, if you have 2 or 3 guns, you can run your guns overheated for a really long time without breaking them. And so, considering how quickly frigate combat usually ends, you're never going to destroy your guns, and overheating the guns actually will give you a significant amount of DPS increase. If you look at it as an example here, in this ship right now I have 211 DPS with my guns, and if I overheat the guns and I go in 242.9, so that's 31 DPS higher than it was without overheating. That makes a big difference in combat when it's only going to last probably 30 seconds or less. Same with the repper. I believe overheating on the repper gives you a 15% duration bonus, meaning it's 15% quicker to rep, and it gives you an actual 10% repper bonus. So this is also really powerful, and generally, since you don't have anything else being overheated in your lower rack, the repper can actually be overheated for an extremely long time, more than enough time to go through all your paste, and then go beyond that quite a while before it's going to overheat so much that it breaks. So pretty much any time I go anywhere, this is what I do. I'll jump into another system, for example, Onita, and I'm already pre-overheated. As soon as I jump into the next system, I will just immediately, well, as I warp or uncloak, I'll immediately pre-overheat the same 2 modules. There are situations where you want to pre-overheat other modules. I've never needed to overheat a NOS, but for example a web and a scram, especially in a blaster ship, if you are warping in on someone or going through a gate and you don't know where they're going to be at on the other side, it is good to always pre-overheat your web and scram. If they're just a little ways too far off the button for you to catch them, maybe they're 11 or 12 km off the button, if you don't pre-overheat your scram and they're quicker than you, they might be able to stay out of web and scram range. If you pre-overheat both modules, you might get that extra range that you need to catch them before they can get away. The web will give you 13 km instead of 10 if you overheat it. I can't overheat yet. Let me warp somewhere here. I'll just go to the safe spot. So as soon as I start warping, I immediately pre-overheat both modules and activate my damage control. And I'm not clicking to pre-overheat. One way you can pre-overheat your weapons or overheat when you're in combat is use the shift key. You can actually shift plus click on a module to overheat or not overheat or unoverheat the weapon. You can also shift press hotkey. So I can do shift F1 to swap the overheat or toggle the overheat on my weapon. I can hit control shift F1 to toggle overheat on my repper. Shift F2 and F3 will toggle overheat on the web and the scram that I have in the high slots. It's much quicker for me to be able to use the hotkeys than have to worry about clicking, especially if I'm trying to also click somewhere up on the overview or click orbit or something like that. So I will usually activate my overheat on the web if I'm the one initiating combat from outside. This gives me 13 km range instead of the 10 km normal, and you'll look with the scram, it's got a 9 km range. And if I overheat it, it's actually 10.8, I believe. It says 10, but it rounds down, so we get a 10.8 km range. That possibly gives you the extra range you'll need. So aside from overheating, there are some other things you can do in preparation for combat or while you're already in combat. I was having a discussion with a corp mate earlier today, and one thing that I always do as a Galente pilot that typically flies blaster ships, I know what ships I'm fighting ahead of time, and when I know that, I make adjustments to ammo type and overheating ahead of time. For example, if I'm in this AB Comet and I know I'm going to be engaging, for example, a breacher or a kestrel or a hookbill. These three ships always use rockets and they always scram kite. That means they're going to try to keep you at about 9 km range, and they're going to try to just keep you there because they know you can't hit them at that range, or if you can hit them, you're going to do extremely minimal damage, but their rockets will do full damage. So there's a couple things you need to do when you're planning for this. The first thing is, if I ever see any of these ships on scan, I immediately swap my ammo. I always carry null in my cargo hold, and I will immediately swap to null. The difference between void or antimatter and null in range is actually pretty significant. You can see here with null, my optimal is 3 km, my fall off is 7.2, which means that's actually a 4200 difference. I can actually hit out to about 11.5. Now at 10 km plus, the damage is going to be pathetic, but if I switch back to void, you'll see that there's not even any way I can hit out to 10 km. I probably can't even hit out to 9 km. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so with void, my fall off is roughly 1500 meters. So if you add another 1500 to that fall off range, I'm going to be at 4600 meters. I'm not going to hit anything. So you can preload null, and that gives you the advantage. You don't want to swap ammo in the middle of combat if you don't have to. It only takes 5 seconds, but you have to disable your guns. It is a good tactic to do if you're already in combat and you're using void and you're getting range pulled on you. You should definitely stop your guns, swap ammo, and continue firing, because just keep shooting with void is not going to do anything. So, but if you know you're going to be engaging a hookbill, for example, you should preload null immediately. It doesn't matter if you think he might start out right on top of you. You want to cut out that 5-second reload time plus the time it takes for your guns to stop firing. And by doing null, you do lose a little bit of DPS. For example, I lose, I think, about 40 DPS going from or actually more like 50 or 60 DPS going from void to null. But if you factor out that 5 to 7 seconds you're going to have to wait to reload, it's actually going to be significantly higher DPS. The other thing you're going to want to do is, you do not want to orbit ships that are using rockets, or any missiles really. I mean, you can if you want to, but if you're actually engaging something that you know is going to scram range kite you, again, same examples, kestrel, hookbill, breacher, orbiting just gives them a chance to pull more range on you, and it doesn't assist you in any way because they have no tracking with their rockets. So orbiting them is not going to help your ship in any way, and it's actually going to help them, because if they're just flying directly away from you, your ship's going to try to orbit, it's going to try to pull out sideways, and that's just going to give them more room to maneuver, especially if their ship is faster than yours, which it generally will be, since they're built around being able to keep you at 8 or 9 km range. So you always want to just approach. Don't orbit, just immediately click on the ship and approach, and make sure you have your prop mods going, everything else. If they start pulling range on you, as soon as they start getting outside of your optimal range, for example with this ship with null I have a 3 km optimal range, if I see them pulling outside of that range and they're still getting further away, I will immediately overheat my afterburner. This will give you a decent amount of extra speed. In this Comet, it probably gives me an extra 400 or 500 meters per second. This, if nothing else, it keeps them from getting any further out of your optimal, at least for a short period of time, and it might even get you closer to them. You can only overheat your afterburner for a short amount of time. It's got maybe a 4 or 5 second cycle time, and I think I can probably overheat it for maybe 7 or so cycles before it breaks, but that is generally all the time you'll need to be able to kill somebody. And if you find that the overheating the afterburner gets you right on top of them, you can stop overheating it to conserve it, and then they'll slowly pull away again, but usually by then you'll have already killed them. So these are a few of the things you can do to really prep for combat. These make a huge difference. If you go through everything that I just explained, the difference in DPS and preparedness and your optimal range and your fall off and everything else will be so different. You'll find ships that you previously thought you would never be able to beat, and you'll easily be able to just crush them into the ground. So I hope this first video has been helpful for everybody, and this is Qatar Ensive signing off.